Hey, you there! Yes, you! Let me tell you about Ace Attorney. What was that? You've never heard of Ace Attorney? That figures. You're not the first. Well, anyways, best I explain. Ace Attorney is a video game series where you play as a criminal defense attorney and you have to defend your client of murder. Now, you might be thinking, geez, that sounds incredibly fucking boring. And at first glance, it is. The job of a defense attorney is both a stressful and busy one. However, once you dig further and further into it, you'll find a series rich with well-told stories, amazing characters, and fantastic music. So, first of all, where did it start? Ace Attorney was originally created in Japan by Shu Takumi, a worker at Capcom. It was put on the Game Boy Advance in 2001 under the name Gyakuten Saiban. Many ideas were thrown in for what this originally was going to be. Perhaps the biggest one was the main character was originally going to be a detective, only for him to be accused of murder from the get-go. When he was tried in court, he would take up his own defense because his lawyer was ultimately useless. The series was originally meant for the Game Boy Color, but after Takumi and his crew were shown the Game Boy Advance, they were thrilled with the technology it contained and moved it over to that system. The first 3 games were released exclusively in Japan on the GBA in 2001, 2, and 4, but all 3 were then ported over to the Nintendo DS for every other part of the world in 2005, 6, and 7, with the first game adding in an additional chapter with the DS features. The series still goes on to this day, with the most recent title, Spirit of Justice, being released in September of 2016, as well as there being a sequel confirmed for the Japan-only title Dai Gyakuten Saiban. Whether or not we will be getting more titles in the future is up to debate, but considering the success of the series, I think we can see more of our lawyer friends in the future. Now, I want to get this out of the way. This series is not based on the American legal system. It's actually based on Japan's. There's no jury, everything's done where the judge makes the final verdict, and there's a 99% criminal conviction rate. Defense attorneys have a very hard time in Japan, which reflects on how hopeless a lot of cases are in this series. The legal system of the Ace Attorney universe is a satire of Japan's legal system, created by Takumi to make a point on how broken and unfair it actually is, though it's also played for laughs too. For example, the police, in the form of Dick Gumshoe, are incredibly incompetent. He's an idiot that does a lot wrong. Also, the judge is an idiot. He's old, he's oblivious, and it's hilarious. The prosecution also has the ability to get away with a lot of shit that would normally be illegal, like using a whip on the opposing lawyer, or even throwing very hot beverages. It's weird, it's dumb, and I love it. So, with the backstory out of the way, what exactly entails you in Ace Attorney? You play as rookie defense attorney Phoenix Wright where, as said previously, you take on clients and defend them from murder whilst also finding the real killer at the same time. Your job is to investigate crime scenes and collect evidence to use in the trial the next day. Once you get to the trial, you cross-examine witnesses and find contradictions in their statements by presenting said evidence that doesn't correctly match with what someone said. You face off against rival prosecutors who are trying to convict your client, and each one changes from game to game. You always start off against Winston Payne, a quote-unquote rookie killer. He's an easy opponent, just meant for the tutorial case at the start, along with pretty much being the joke character throughout the whole series. Even in other games where he doesn't appear, there's always a different version of him, whether it be his younger brother or even his ancestor. No matter what game it is, you're pretty much guaranteed to be reminded of his existence. As for other rivals, you've got Miles Edgeworth, the genius prosecutor trained under the prestigious Manfred von Karma, with a perfect 40-year win streak, who you also face at one point. Both are kinda dicks. There's also Franziska von Karma, daughter of the previously mentioned Manfred. She whips people. And finally, the mysterious Godo. He drinks a lot of coffee. However, Phoenix is not the only playable character. In the third game, Trials and Tribulations, you play as Phoenix's mentor, Mia Fey, for 2 cases. But best I give some story for her. She was Phoenix's boss in the first game where she helped him on his very first trial until, spoiler alert, she gets killed the very next case at the start of it. Her sister, Maya, is the one accused of doing her in, and yep, you gotta defend her. But there's an aspect introduced in this series called spirit channeling, where women that have spiritual powers can physically channel dead people. It's stupid, stupid and crazy, and I think Shu Takumi might have been on drugs when he thought of this, but I fucking love it. Maya has this power within her, so she's able to bring Mia along with her, in a sense. She accompanies Phoenix all throughout the first 3 games, and overall helps him learn more about what it truly means to be a defense attorney. But in the cases where you play as her in Trials and Tribulations, you go back to her own career as a defense attorney and see what she went through, one of which involved defending a young pre-attorney's badge wearing Phoenix Wright. From first to third game, you meet lots of wacky characters, from future mainstays to ones that just stay in the game they appear in. But this first trilogy also shows the growth of Phoenix. He goes from a timid nobody that pulls miracles straight out of his ass, I don't want to imagine what that looks like, to one of the most renowned defense attorneys ever that pulls miracles straight out of his ass. However, that's just the first 3 games. After this, a bunch of others were made, starting with Apollo Justice: Ace Attorney. This one takes place 10 years after the first game and stars a completely new character, Apollo Justice. Much like with Phoenix Wright, he's a brand new defense attorney. Phoenix does appear in this game, but he's not a lawyer. What happens? Well, you've gotta play the game for yourself. I ain't spoiling anything. Apollo faces a lot of stuff in this game, like rival prosecutor Clavier Gavin, who is also Rockstar, and Phoenix being incredibly vague and confusing to him, not being the character he was before. 2 years later, in 2009, we got a spin-off game starring Miles Edgeworth, the most popular character in the whole series. Fun fact, he appears in the most amount of games, even more so than Phoenix himself. I can only imagine we were given this spin-off series because Edgeworth is as popular as he is, but I digress. This one shows off the more investigative side of the series, as there aren't any courtroom segments at all in this game. Also because it's called Ace Attorney Investigations, but, you know, whatever. This really shows how badass Miles Edgeworth is, complimenting him really well. Oh hey, it also got a sequel, albeit never released outside of Japan, and the only way to play it is through a fan translation, but it's a sequel nonetheless! You meet some new characters along the way, and also get development on previous mainstays like Detective Gumshoe, Franziska von Karma, and of course, Miles Edgeworth. After Investigations 2 not seeing a Western release and the crossover game Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright suffering the same fate, this might seem like it's the end of Ace Attorney. However, with 2013 comes hope. Ace Attorney Dual Destinies made its release and was the first localized game in the series on the 3DS. This allowed for technology to evolve and better character models to be made in the game. In this adventure, you play as 3 characters this time. Phoenix returns to the bench, Apollo still working, and new rookie attorney Athena Sykes, a psychology specialist. Who could be the new prosecutor for this game? Oh, nobody. Just someone that's on death row because of a horrible murder he committed. Yeah, that's normal. A year later, the crossover of Professor Layton and Ace Attorney was finally localized, also being on the 3DS. Finally, we come to the latest entry in the series, Spirit of Justice. You play as all the same characters in Dual Destinies, but this one's a bit different. Half the game is playing as Phoenix in a foreign country where lawyers are extremely hated, and if they fail to defend their client, they share the same fate. The other half is standard courtroom procedures you're used to by now, but having this fresh way of thinking is pretty nice. So, that's Ace Attorney. It's an obscure series I never thought I'd ever play, but over the 3 years that I've actually been with it, I've grown to love it immensely, to the point where it's become my favorite game series ever. Some obscure game about a lawyer doing his job definitely sounds like something destined to fail, but the outcome was the exact opposite, having gained a great following of beloved fans. Honestly, I'd recommend the series highly, however you can get it. And honestly, I hope you can enjoy it like I do, even if it's not on the same level. I just hope I can make fellow fans out of any of you after this.